Welcome to the ultimate path. What is the ultimate path? Why do we call it the ultimate path? We call it the ultimate path of happiness because if you achieve it, you will never lose it in this life or the next. If you are able to achieve happiness in this lifetime, perhaps you may not be able to achieve it in your next life. As long as you are stuck in the cycle of rebirth or the cycle of existence, which is called samsara, you cannot obtain ultimate happiness because whichever lifetime you achieve happiness may not carry over to the next life. The only way to achieve ultimate happiness is to actually break the cycle of existence and rebirth and be liberated from samsara itself by attaining enlightenment. Enlightenment is the ultimate state of happiness or nirvana, and it is only by practicing the Buddha Dharma that one can achieve enlightenment. The general structure of Buddhist practice, which leads to enlightenment, is based on what are called the Four Noble Truths, which the Buddha taught in his first public teachings over 2,000 years ago. They constitute the foundation for the entire Buddhist path. These Four Noble Truths are 1. The truth of suffering. 2. The truth of its origin. 3. The truth of its cessation. And 4. The truth of the path which leads to that cessation. According to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in one of his teachings he said, Buddha's teachings on the Four Noble Truths is based on the natural needs and desires of living beings. All of us have a natural instinct to desire happiness and avoid suffering. Therefore, the practice of Dharma should be a technique whereby we can fulfill that need. Since what we desire is happiness, and we do not desire is suffering, Buddha first taught the truth of suffering so that we would be able to recognize suffering for what it is. Then, although we may enjoy certain degrees of happiness, even while we are subject to suffering, true happiness will always elude us as long as we carry the causes of suffering inside us. This is why, in the second noble truth, Buddha taught the importance of eliminating the origin of suffering by first of all identifying it. With the third noble truth, he explained that as a result of recognizing that origin of suffering, there is cessation, a state that is free from all suffering. Buddha then taught the fourth noble truth, the path that will ultimately lead us to that cessation. Therefore, you can say that ultimate happiness is a state free from all suffering. So we first have to understand what is suffering. According to Buddha's teachings, there are three kinds of suffering. The first kind is called ordinary suffering. This is the suffering of suffering, the most obvious, direct, and universally recognized form of pain. It encompasses both physical and emotional distress. Some examples of physical pain that could cause suffering would be sickness, injury, old age, and physical exhaustion. Some examples of emotional pain that could cause suffering would be grief, sadness, anxiety, and depression, or situational distress, such as, for example, being stuck in an unpleasant situation or encountering things we dislike. For instance, we might be stuck in a job that we can't stand but have to put up with because it pays our bills. So we suffer while we're doing our job. Or we might be in an abusive relationship that we are unable to leave. And so we suffer while we are still in that relationship. The second type of suffering is called suffering of change. This is the suffering caused by impermanence. It refers to the anxiety and the stress that arise because pleasant situations, objects, and relationships are inherently temporary, and when they change, it ends up causing dissatisfaction or suffering. For instance, the fading of a joyful moment, the end of a vacation, or the breakdown of a good relationship leads to a loss of happiness. Or the subtle underlying worry we feel during a happy moment because we know it will eventually end. Or even the burden of luxury. For instance, buying a new item brings joy, but it quickly transitions into the stress of maintenance, aging, and eventual loss. For example, we may feel joyful when we first buy our luxury car, but when we start to worry about it getting scratched, and so when the car gets banged up, we get upset and suffer. The last kind of suffering is more subtle. It is called all-pervasive suffering. This is conditioned suffering, often considered the deepest, most subtle form of suffering, or dukkha in Sanskrit. It is the existential baseline unsatisfactionness of life that stems from the fact that all things are interdependent and constantly changing. This manifests in several ways. First, it creates existential unease. This is a low-grade background sense of insecurity or lack of fulfillment, even when nothing is obviously wrong. Second, it makes us feel a lack of control because we realize that our bodies, minds, and environments are highly vulnerable to outside conditions and causes beyond our control. Finally, it manifests as the cycle of clinging, the continuous mental habit of grasping, constructing expectations, labels, and desires, which inevitably are unfulfilled because of the constant change and impermanence nature of reality. To develop a deeper understanding of suffering and how it affects you, let's do the following exercise. Contemplate and meditate on the three types of suffering. So find a quiet place where you can sit, close your eyes, and then first reflect and recount several major incidents in your life when you experience the first type of suffering, which is suffering of suffering. For instance, you might recall how you felt the last time when you were terribly ill or felt depressed. Second, reflect and recount several major incidents in your life when you experience the second type of suffering, which is suffering of change. For example, you might recall how you felt when you lost a loved one or when your love relationship came to an end. And third, reflect and recount several major situations in your life when you experience the third type of suffering, which is all-pervasive suffering. For instance, you might recall when you really desired something, but couldn't fulfill that desire because the external circumstances changed. Until we can identify what is suffering in our lives and bring a cessation to that suffering, we will not be able to attain ultimate happiness. Therefore, following the Buddhist path provides a way to bring cessation to all forms of suffering and attain ultimate happiness or nirvana.